Hello, welcome to week 2 of writing and editing for digital media. This week we're discussing digital genres. Before we get going, I would just like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land that I'm recording this on. I want to also acknowledge that sovereignty has not been ceded and pay my respects to past and present elders, and also extend that respect to any Aboriginal students who might be watching this lecture today. So week 2, we're here. We're going to be talking about digital genre. As always, this lecture will be in 3 small parts, and I'll try and kind of keep it as brief as I can, and save the amount of time you have to sort of watch a lecture online and kind of having screen time. So this is kind of what we're going to be covering this week. So I'm just going to kind of let you know about a Q&A session that we're going to have coming up about the first assignment. Then we're going to be talking about what genre actually means. We'll be discussing digital genre and trying to understand what we mean when we say digital genre. We're going to look at platform affordances and how they influence different digital genres. And we're going to look at the kind of convention, the genre conventions of blogging, which is very relevant to you and your first and second assignments. So just to kind of kick things off, we're going to have a Q&A session for the first assignment. I'll be hosting that on Monday, the 31st of August from 10 till 11 a.m., which is week 5, and we'll have a Zoom session for that. I will email you to remind you about that in the lead up to it, but this is going to be an opportunity for you to come and discuss your assignments and ask questions about the first assignment. We won't be talking about the test in this time. We won't be talking about the second assignment in this time. We'll be talking about the first assignment. It's the week before it's due. You don't have to come to this session. It's completely up to you. I will record it and pop it up on the LMS. And we won't be covering any new material. We'll just be discussing your questions about the assignment. So it's just like a little heads up that that's happening in week 5. I will remind you in the lead up to, though. Okay, so let's get going on this week's actual lecture content. So what does genre mean? So this week we're going to be talking about digital genre, which is not a concept that is wholly defined. We'll keep coming back to the concept of digital genres time and time again over the rest of the semester when we talk about the different ways that we communicate online. But we don't really have a sort of strict definition of digital genre. So today I kind of want to discuss kind of around the concept and what we might understand to be digital genres. So let's kind of, when we talk about genre, let's kind of take digital out of it just for a moment and just talk about genre kind of more broadly. Literary genres evolved over time. You couldn't write for the internet in 1557 when this book was created. Sorry, 1597, when this book was created. But the printing press allowed for the development of more and more printed materials. And then we kind of had to come up with a way to classify all these printed materials. And we did it under a sort of system of kind of classification, broad, informal classification, and we called them genres. So the digital communications tools that we have today, we kind of can use this sort of idea of genres to understand and classify them. In the book industry, we also use other classification systems like BISAC codes, and libraries use things like Dewey Decimal Systems, and increasingly platforms like Amazon have different categorization systems for books and for finding kind of publishing material. But I think we can learn a lot about digital genres from looking at kind of genres more broadly. So genres help us to understand conventions and expectations, style, structure, medium, how to read and understand something, and also what something might look like. So an example of a genre is crime. Crime fiction is a genre, and when you read a book that is in the crime genre, there are all of these things that characterize that writing and that sort of that novel, say, and readers of that genre expect a certain kind of conventions and certain kind of styles. Romance is another one. Fantasy is another one. If you had a fantasy text that had no sort of fantastical elements in it, you might not consider that to be a fantasy text. See how there's sort of different conventions and expectations that readers bring to different genres. And if we look at things like what something might look like, this is a book. I've got a picture of a book here. How do we understand a book then? A physical book. It's got pages, it's got a cover, it's got writing or pictures. But if we take the idea of a book outside of kind of the physical realm and put it into the digital realm, then what does a book look like? These are all questions that kind of are buzzing around research and into kind of sort of digital practices and how we understand digital content, and things that we can kind of keep discussing in our tutorials. But I suppose from this conversation here, I just want you to kind of take away the idea that genres and classifications help us to understand sort of how something is going to exist, why it exists the way it does, and the expectations that we bring to kind of engaging with that text or content. So this is kind of genre more generally, but what about digital genre? So when we use the term digital genre in this subject, we're referring to the different types of online writing and online content production. So what do you think the two most important things that will determine the genre of online content? What are the two things that really inform and push and determine and influence the genre of our content that we're producing online? If we were in a lecture theatre, I would call out for answers, but we're not. So I will answer my own question. Purpose and audience. Once you determine the purpose of your content and the audience for your content, the genre of your content will then be shaped by the platform, such as Twitter or YouTube. So digital genre is really, really influenced by the purpose of the content, the audience of the content, and then finally the platform that the content is being shared on. So what do these platforms tell us about different digital genres? We can learn a lot about particular genres, styles, conventions, expectations, content from looking at platforms themselves. So Twitter, really easy. All of tweets, the individual tweets are really short. They're 280 characters. So the convention of writing on Twitter is to write really, really short little messages. It was once termed a microblogging site. I don't think they use that terminology anymore, but it's always sort of been understood to be microblogging, so really, really small. The use of hashtags is very widespread. We're going to come back to the hashtag and the invention of the hashtag, which originated on Twitter. But we know that it's a classification system within the Twitter platform and now on other platforms. It's often focused on current affairs and regular and relevant issues, politics, media, entertainment. And it can be difficult to engage with if you've never used it before. And there are particular, what would you call them? Particular kind of conventions or ways of kind of existing within the Twitter platform and the Twitter genre that can be hard to engage with if you are unfamiliar with it, which is a really classic characteristic of different genres. I don't really know anything about science fiction, and sometimes when I do read science fiction, very occasionally, I can sometimes struggle with engaging with the text because there are conventions that I don't quite understand. Very common in digital genres and different platforms, Twitter being a great example. Instagram is an image-based platform, and there's no kind of word count really or character count in the descriptions that you can on each post. So the use of lots and lots of hashtags per post is really common. You wouldn't see this in hashtags in Twitter. See, the use of hashtags is very different on Instagram than it is on Twitter. You can't really link from individual posts that you post on your grid. It's difficult to link from your stories unless you're you've got a particular follower account. And so people put the links to things in their bio, and the term link in bio is very commonly sort of seen on Instagram. And then you have stories and posts, and the conventions of posting and the type of content that is posted in stories versus in actual posts that go on the grid is very different. So we're seeing the subgenre of content here on Instagram. Snapchat is image and video and text-based. It's ephemeral. It's a closed network, so it's private. And the use of filters is very widespread. So it's not strange to see someone with, bunny rabbit ears on Snapchat, but imagine seeing that for the very, very first time. You might have been like, this is a bit strange. But it's become very common and widespread. I think what is really interesting about Snapchat is the fact that the videos or the posts, the snaps are ephemeral, so they disappear. They only last for a small amount of time. And also the network is closed. So unlike Twitter, you can have a private Twitter account, but rarely do people. Much more common for it to be open. Anyone can read anyone's tweets. Snapchat is very different. It's a closed network. Reddit is another platform that has a very, very specific style and very, very sort of tightly defined conventions and content conventions. And it can be very difficult for someone who's never used the platform before, or who's only engaged with content from the platform on other platforms, like on Twitter, things being reposted, maybe on Instagram, things being screenshotted and posted. It can be really difficult to grasp the platform and understand the way the platform works if you don't really have any familiarity with it. It takes a little bit of time to get used to. And the whole platform works on a series of comments and votes. And so that's kind of the convention, the genre convention of Reddit. And then WordPress, which is something that we're going to become really familiar with over the next 12 weeks. This is a blogging platform. It originated as a blogging platform. Now it has kind of a more website functionality, as you're going to become to sort of understand. But it is still a blogging platform with blog posts. It's got a sort of decentralized network. It has very individualized styles, and you can kind of manipulate and update and customize the kind of look and feel of your site. And the use of multimedia is really, really prevalent. This is a platform, and I think it's really important to think about blogging within the kind of social media platform rhetoric, and that will help us to make sure that our blogs that we're producing are kind of part of a really complex and interesting and intertwined network. So that's the end of part one. We're going to come back in, I don't know, just a moment and talk about platform affordances. So I will see you on the other side.